to switch hats now, I am also on the line to talk about what happens when you take action to talk about the healthy food and beverage sales in municipal rec facilities in BC. I'm talking a little bit about the past. I want to provide a little overview of what we did here between 2008 and 2010, and then present our results of the initiative so you can see what happens to some of the data. The background of healthy food and beverage sales in municipal recreation, it was funded by the BC Healthy Living Alliance following the development of a pilot toolkit in British Columbia to build capacity. And the goals of the project, if you could change the slide, Bill, are encouraging the sale of healthy food and beverage through on-site vending machines, concessions, cafeterias, and snack bars, and creating a healthy food environment across the whole recreation setting. And this is in the context of we had a vending guideline for vending guidelines for school, or food sales guidelines in the school, and then the government came out with a vending guideline for government buildings, of which municipal buildings were counted. It's a voluntary guideline. This is a capacity building initiative within that, funded by the BC Healthy Living Alliance through funding from the Ministry of Health. You've seen this framework. I just introduced it as looking at. We adopted the whole setting framework and a choice-based community mobilization model so that people could take action where they were able to take action, and in the broadest sense, and target areas. For instance, sometimes people had just signed their vending contract and didn't have as much room to change that contract for a few years, although they would be negotiating. So they might focus more on their programming or their food security or their worksite wellness. So moving to the next slide, we talk about it was one of the first initiatives of its kind in North America, a massive jurisdictional approach. Over the 4 phases, we had 49 BC municipalities or districts, including 12 First Nations, apply for grant funding and the initiative. That affected approximately 150 plus facilities, ranging from pools, arenas, multiplexes, sport complexes, band offices, community meeting spaces. And we did align with the BC school guidelines and guidelines for vending in government buildings. What we provided was a capacity building approach. There were some planning grants. In the first phase, our mentoring communities received $12,500. After that, they received $7,500, phase 2 to 4. There was a toolkit that was developed, which provided all real-world examples, stories, some planning steps, other resources like a quick start guide, rack cards, and distributing resources from other health eating programs. We then also provided quite a bit of technical support. Next slide, Bill. Which was live. They could phone up our evaluation team or the provincial coordinator with BCHLA at the BCRPA. Interactive web-based tools. So the toolkit was up on the web. We had videos. We had lessons, little video classrooms about auditing your vending or what happened in some of the mentor communities. And then we had cross-community sharing by teleconference. We also provided our web-based resources. Please, we have some old resources. We're in the process of updating these, so at the next webinar, Chi Chavelli will talk about those. But these were the websites as they stood. British Columbia, we have a great resource called the Brand Lean Food List, where you can profile your vending products in a list. And then we offered promising practice videos, which you can click on, and they'll tell the stories of other communities where they were taking action. Here's an image of the Brand Name Food List. Anybody across the country can actually sign up, but it's based on the BC guidelines. And finally, we provided some marketing resources, clings and posters to indicate that centers were transitioning to providing healthy food environment. The project had a number of phases. I just talked about it. Phase 1 was 10 what we called mentor communities. They were in to try it out and then be able to help the other communities from phase 2 to 4. You'll say phase 2 was our largest phase, and then we did put a comparison group, and I'm going to talk to you about the data from the comparison between phase 3 and 4 in the comparison group. Through those phases, I think you might have to click on the slide. My map hasn't shown up here. Oh, that might be a PDF problem. Oh, well, it's all across British Columbia, right to the Yukon border at the Danu, and this is a map of British Columbia that I didn't notice wasn't up there. And if you go to the next one, it was all geographical location. Oh, there we go, of the facilities impacted. So this does show where everybody was, and it also shows what type of facilities. So in the brown, you'll note these are largely some of the Aboriginal communities where they actually didn't have a stated recreation facility, but they might be working with a band office, they might be working with their school, which is their shared rec facility, or other community meeting spaces. This is more in the rural remote areas. So we did have a rural remote approach as well as a large urban center. What happened with our evaluation? We considered a real-world trial. We didn't randomize people. It was centers applied to be part of the initiative, and then we set up a comparison condition with those that were interested in being a comparison community. We had a process evaluation to describe what went on, and we also looked at what was the impact on the overall facility food environment or capacity. We looked at policy development and strategic planning efforts. We looked at their vending profiles before and after and concession services. And we looked at a bit of consumer perceptions through a customer survey. And we also, through our process evaluation, looked at the key issues related to implementation. How did it go? What were facilitators and barriers? What do people recommend? And the evaluation was meant to serve as a catalyst, and I'll show you why. So we had an evaluation design that looked like this. They would get orientated. Once their grant was approved, they had to put a proposal in. They were orientated to the project and to the measurement, and they took a baseline evaluation measure, which included a facility assessment audit, a vending audit of 4 randomly assigned machines, 2 beverage, 2 drink. They did a patron survey out at 2 of their busiest times. They asked patrons to talk about what they saw in the facility, how aware they were, what they wanted out of food environments, what they're willing to pay. And there were 2 optional assessments depending on if they were targeting their concession. They could audit the foods, and they could also do a policy assessment, although the facilities assessment did look at policy. Because we had a time limit on this initiative, each wave came through with about 8 months, anywhere from 8 to 10 months between baseline and follow-up, which meant that not all the work was done by the time we followed up. We analyzed, and just a note, because we were using the data as a knowledge exchange piece, as soon as they did their facilities assessment and vending audit, we turned the baseline data to the community so they could show it to their decision makers and work from it. So what did we find out? In our facility assessment, where we looked at this graph, the light purple is baseline for the comparison communities, and the dark purple is the follow-up in comparison communities. These are communities that we asked that were kind of interested but weren't ready and said they would serve as a usual practice comparison, but they were already a little bit interested. So that's an interesting note on this slide. And then the light green and dark green are our healthy food and beverage grant communities. And you will see that from baseline to follow-up, there was a significant difference in the amount of strategic planning and getting ready to put policies in place going on across communities. It is actually in the comparison communities who we asked to not change anything, you could see that just getting involved in auditing got them talking about what they would do and starting to plan. And that was significantly different between baseline and follow-up, but it was largely, it was also significantly different in healthy food and beverage. And these differences were significant between the comparison and control. So not only did everybody gain once they just measured what they were doing, but when we had the capacity building initiative, they had greater gains. You see in supportive environments offering more programming and more messaging, and then communication and education, there were large impacts, and then overall their capacity scores increased. So it was good news. The good news was if you go in and measure or audit what's going on, rec centers start to change, and if you go on in and do more capacity building, the change is greater. Then we looked at their vending, and you'll see down when you're looking at the screen, vertically down the left is the healthy food and beverage grant communities. Their baseline policy, this is the policy, You can see at the outset a little bit of policy under development, not much policy being implemented, quite a few centers, 50% with no policy. And after their eight months of intervention, you see a large initiative to putting policies in place. When we interviewed people, they felt that the foundation of action in the rec center is to create local facility policy, and quite a bit of implementation, a lot of underdevelopment, and very few didn't have any policy in place. You see, though, we got a little activity as well in the comparison communities. This wasn't significant, but they also started to develop policy. In vending, same thing. You look at the grant communities. We got the significant difference in the grant communities. They're reducing the not recommended products, that's by the BC guidelines, and increasing choose most products that were provided. But changes were small, and in these grant phases, you might only see 3 to 4 communities that were able to change their vending policy in the time. But many were still able to get small shifts out of their vending companies just by negotiating. Finally, we did see significant changes in patron awareness of those facilities that were taking action. There was a difference in patron awareness of something going on. The next slides are just images of what it looks like. We've gone from a sponsored machine to a Choose Most machine. This is in Burnaby with a great partner there, Fraser Valley Vending. Here's a We Sell Pop, We Sell Chips, We Sell Hot Dogs concession. And here it is when they're offering whole wheat bread, buns, wraps, things with salad. And then the next one shows a menu where they're starting to do menu transitions, and in green, these are the types of revisions to menu that the concessions went to. We had some other impacts. I'll just quickly go through this because we have to come in on time here. There was development of policy, including concessionaires in the planning process, hiring dietitians to consult and provide advice, doing taste testing, which has really worked in the school environment, showing how good healthy alternatives can taste, selling smaller portions, making the healthy option the default instead of salad, instead of fries. They had to ask for fries, providing a sense of choice, changing equipment, limiting concession hours, changing things one item at a time. This is what went on in concessions. Next, we also, because we had a whole setting model, they started to change the menus at birthday parties that were sponsored at their center, youth dances, after-school programming. They changed what they're offering at special events, decorated their lobbies, offered free food samples, hired a dietitian to answer questions. They started to change what they're offering at their sporting events. Next, in the broader look again in food securities, they built community gardens. During their summer camps, they hosted pocket and farmers markets in local rec facilities, and this is ongoing. They planted food trees for gleaning projects. And next, they worked on their work site, their staff. They started serving healthier snacks at their training events and celebrations. We have a guideline called Eat Well, Meet Well. They adopted that as their staff meeting practices. They offered food safe training for concession staff, and they revamped their staff lunch rooms to support packing in healthy lunches. So that's what also in sport fundraising, they started to use non-food options to raise funds. So you see we had a broad model in BC beyond vending, but we saw changes in all of those things. What happened with the implementation? What made it difficult? Here's the major theme: that transition into healthy options was complex, and you see the challenges there. One is revenue loss. One is the resource limitations within the rec center. This is hard work, and it takes resources. There's some competition in the food environment, the corner store next door. Sometimes if you're changing your vending and you don't take on your concession, you have competition within the center. There were some unique challenges that came on there. Finding suitable products is a major barrier. It's a growing industry, but there isn't always enough. And some lack of stakeholder buy-in and need for policy development. On the other end, the next image is of the facilitators, which are the same type of themes, that there was a lot of support for change, that the resources provided through the Healthy Food and Beverage Capacity Building were really valuable, that sharing information across sites was valuable, that the evaluation built, having data to show your decision makers helped, that being a part of a bigger movement helped, and that stakeholder buy-in, while it could be also a challenge in policy, it was very helpful if it was there. So we learned a few lessons along the way. These are just some highlights. That change is a process that takes a lot of time. It can take anywhere from 2 to 5 years, depending where your contract is, depending where the willingness is. A phased approach appeared to be more feasible and taking small steps. Pairing education like taste testing and dietitians and postering and with the policy really helped. Every community could act, but change started at different points. And evaluation and monitoring actually supported change, but evaluation is hard and requires resources. Finally, we're still in action in BC. We had a slight hiatus between 2010 and 2012 through KCO 2 and the BC Ministry of Health Investment. We've been revitalizing action in those communities where when there isn't dedicated staff, some of the vending profiles fall off because they're not monitoring what the provider is doing. So in revitalizing action, we have community mobilization grants, smaller than in the BC Healthy Living Initiative, updating and renewing our online toolkit, and I've talked to people across the country as we're trying to make it a bit of a one-stop shop and not so BC-orientated, much more relevant for every jurisdiction. We're creating online training. We're going to be conducting another scan and audit in 2014. There's some new school guidelines, which mean our government building guidelines will be changed, and the brand new name food list is being revamped because of that. So now I'd like to really pass over to Dana.